Time for me to hurt my own feelings by doing a rewatch of my favorite Disney animated classic, Alice in Wonderland. When we meet Alice, she's sort of refusing to do her schoolwork, and side note, this is her sister. I thought this was her mom or her tutor because I was very confident that this was a 40-year-old adult, but no. Anyway, Alice does not want to learn. She wants to vibe in a field of daisies, and honestly, who could blame her? She's hanging out with her precious kitten Dinah when they see a rabbit dressed in business attire carrying a giant pocket watch, and Alice does what anybody would do in this scenario, which is not to find a trusted adult, but to follow him into this very spooky hole. She, of course, tumbles into this strange portal, and she's shockingly unbothered. We find out pretty much immediately that Alice has the survival skills of a Pop-Tart because after falling into an unmarked lair, she immediately drinks the first beverage she's confronted with, which is unmarked except for a tag that says, "Drink me. Alice, please." She's conversing with this strangely alive doorknob, and she has, as we'll see through this entire film, absolutely no sense of stranger danger. These substance-laced cookies also appear in front of her, and she obviously eats one of those as well. Meanwhile, she's growing and shrinking because she will not stop experimenting with unmarked drugs, which of course causes her to sob uncontrollably. She does make it through the door, but she's tiny and she's trapped in this glass bottle. Before I go any further, we need to acknowledge the fact that Alice in Wonderland doesn't really have a plot. The plot is essentially shared psychosis. So she's in this weird ocean made of her own tears, and there's a dodo bird who looks like he's part of some sort of like established government riding on top of another bird, which eventually segues into the walrus and the carpenter scene. And I love this scene, but it does nothing to move the plot. This is just like a series of fever dreams. Fun fact, in high school when we had to memorize and recite a poem, this is the one I chose, the long one from the book. So I do have a soft spot for this scene. She again sees the white rabbit and is compelled to follow him. She basically stalks him throughout this entire film. She follows him to his home, creepy, and then immediately helps herself to some more drugs and vandalizes his home by turning into a giant inside of it, because cause and effect is largely lost on Alice. The rabbit and the Parliament dodo bird, who is for some reason back, decide she's a monster and try to burn the house down with Alice inside of it. So she eats a carrot and that makes her shrink, which I don't know what that says about the soil in the rabbit's garden, at which point the rabbit entirely forgets that she exists and runs off to whatever it is that he's late for. I will say, if we look at his eyes, he may also be impaired. The next scene is my favorite scene in the entire movie, which is when she gets serenaded by the flower choir. The best parts of this movie are all the plays on words. This reminds me of like a Roald Dahl book or Phantom Toll Booth. Like the bread and butterflies are so cute, and the rocking horse, that's so clever. But then the flowers immediately turn on her and start bullying her because they think she's a weed. She then stumbles into the caterpillar's, what I assume, opium den, where he is also incredibly and aggressively rude. Nobody is nice in this film at all. This is basically like a series of hazing events. She calls him short and he does not like that, so he gets super mad and turns into a butterfly and leaves, but not before telling her to eat his mushroom. And obviously she does, because if we know one thing about Alice, it's that if she meets somebody who is clearly very, very on drugs, she will be taking their advice. She immediately eats too much and turns into a giant again. And this scene has always bothered me because I feel like proportionally this does not look right. She stumbles upon the Cheshire Cat, who is honestly an excellent character, but he is not an excellent friend because he doesn't help Alice at all. She makes her way to the Mad Tea Party, where at least one, if not both of these men are experiencing a severe mental health crisis. Side note, the actor who voices the Mad Hatter is also Smee, and once you hear it, you'll never unhear it. He is also the kooky uncle from Mary Poppins, which is my other favorite Disney movie. Anyway, everything goes horribly wrong, and they start gaslighting her and calling her crazy, even though the Mad Hatter is the one who completely destroys the rabbit's pocket watch, which is basically his most prized possession. But that's enough to finally put Alice over the edge, and she's like, this tea party sucks, so she goes back into the creepy woods. At this point, Alice is sick of everybody's nonsense, and she's decided she would like to return home. But because she suffers with what I would pretty confidently diagnose as impulsive type ADHD, she just wanders aimlessly through a strange forest. But this scene is spectacular because it has all of these goofy creatures, which are iconic. Cheshire Cat materializes again, which she's excited about for some ungodly reason, even though he did not help her at all last time. And he directs her towards the queen because he is her frenemy. She stumbles across these guys, and when she asks why they're frantically painting these flowers, they tell her if they don't, the queen will murder them. So instead of leaving like any smart person would, she joins in. Alice, that's when we meet the Queen of Hearts, who is an absolute nightmare. But I do love her tiny miniature husband. Of course, the queen comes and finds out that they've been painting her roses, so she rages out so bad that she rips the tree out of the ground and then invites Alice to play a game of croquet because she's psychotic. The Cheshire Cat shows up to sabotage Alice again, and everyone sees her underpants. And despite the fact that they're actually very cute, she gets super mad. Alice gets blamed for all of this, but the baby king convinces the queen to let Alice have a trial, which is basically just a sham, so that the queen can justify beheading Alice. Thankfully, she remembers that she has some of the caterpillar's drug mushrooms, so she takes them during the trial and grows really big. But not thankfully, she shrinks very quickly. For some reason, she calls the queen fat, to her face and then shrinks down to be really tiny again, and the queen goes berserk. She's like, actually, trial's canceled, and she has all her cards try to chase Alice so she can cut her head off. She somehow makes her way back to the doorknob, and when she looks through, she sees herself sleeping. So she eventually wakes up and tells her sister about the dream she had, and her sister is like, cool dream, weirdo, and then they go drink tea. The end. If you made it all the way to the end, your reward is this picture of me as Alice with my twins as Tweedledee and Tweedledum when they were like 2 months old, because I actually love this movie.